everyone, and welcome to today's webinar organized by New Wired in partnership with Fox Solution. Thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I see many of you are still entering the session, so welcome everyone. My name is Loredana. I'm marketing manager at New Wired, and I'll be your host for this session. Today, we'll explore some of the common adoption challenges organizations face with Polarion and how guided in-application enablement can help teams work more efficiently while maintaining process consistency and compliance. Now, let me briefly introduce our speakers. We are joined by Lauren Sampson, President at Fox Solution, a trusted Siemens partner. Lawrence brings deep expertise in Polarion implementation, and he will guide us through the reality of Polarion adoption, highlighting some of the common challenges organizations face when rolling out the platform across teams. I'm glad to be joined today also by my colleague Guido Pifferi, Product Manager at New Wired. Guido will introduce the concept of guided enablement with New Wired, and he will also perform a live demo with some practical use cases inside Polarion application. So with that, let's get started. Larry, I'll hand it over to you now. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lori and Guido. Looking forward to this conversation today. Just thought I'd start with a little bit of information about me. If you want to get a hold of me, this is just all the different ways you can do it. With LinkedIn, we have a YouTube channel to talk about a lot of the topics that are interesting to folks that are deploying Polarion. A webinar registration link, my phone number, email. So if you want to get a hold of me, this is the right place to do it. So today we're just going to start, I think, by a conversation around what is it that Polarion does? What is the complexity that we're trying to communicate in any kind of training environment so that people can understand better, why are these applications difficult? And, when we go into doing some kind of a validation effort or a training effort, what are some of the concepts we're trying to communicate? And so this is a great example. So I'm just going to start with a couple slides to talk around methodology. This is the way that Polarion is organized. And I'm going to just step this into a methodology and then jump into the tool to talk to you about it. But essentially what we have is a hierarchy that starts with a repository, which contains all the different work items for the entire instance of the application. That is then broken into project groups, which are broken into projects. Those projects are then decomposed into spaces or folders, which are nestable. And in those folders, we have documents and we have collections of documents. And the documents are comprised of work items. We have elemental work items that are built out inside those documents. And then we have attributes that are associated with those work items. As many and in any kind of complexity that you want, we can have as many of those attributes assigned to any work item type inside of Polarion. So workflow is only considered for documents and work items. And this is really the foundational construction that we want to build inside of Polarion. Now, when we go on and we say, hey, we need to define what are the work items that we care about, what we're going to do is come up with a construction. I'm just going to give you an example of this so you understand sort of when we deploy a project inside of Polarion, what kind of data model is typical. And this is just a decomposition of the requirements in the dark green, where we have user needs, which are refined by system requirements, design requirements, physical requirements, and then process controls. So that is the set of controls that we're going to use to assure that we get what we want out of the product. And then we might have risk management that's in between each one of those levels to explain or process or understand what can happen or what requirements need to be in place to assure something bad doesn't happen to a design. In addition to that, we might have some work items that are related to systems modeling. So what are the capabilities we're trying to build into the product? What are some of the functional chains which are related to system requirements? What are some of the functions that are related to design requirements? so we can build our graphical representation of the function of the product and then map that into the requirements as well. In addition to that, we're going to have a set of test cases that are used to assure that we collect evidence that our design complies with our definition of good that's built out in the requirements. We're going to have external standards that map into these requirements as well. And we're going to have parts. What is the physical design that we're going to use to satisfy those requirements? So the reason I'm talking about this is when we build this sort of abstract model inside of Polarion, it's not just a question of how do we create things, how do we work with documents or whatever. It's also the methodology that we're using or we're deploying inside the application is sort of sometimes difficult to explain because it's different for every implementation of the application. And so I might have one project that's intended use is to do non-product software validation, another one that does validation of processes, and another one that is related to build out the systems engineering for any particular product that we're working on. So because we use the software for different things, we have different methodologies that we're going to be identifying in these projects, and we're going to need to talk about those different methodologies to help people make sense of how we've deployed this particular application. Okay, so this is just a quick discussion to say this is one configuration, and when you start to get into the nuts and bolts of it, it can be pretty complicated. We might have a report that's a system FMEA that relates these system requirements to the design requirements, and that's done in a way that's special to our company. And so therefore we need to really understand better how it is exactly we plan on deploying it so that when we train people, we can walk them through the pieces of this puzzle so they understand what it is they're supposed to be doing from a deployment standpoint. Okay, so once we kind of understand that, I'm just going to jump into the tool a little bit and show you some of the application and how this works inside the application so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So, and some of the things that you'd need to be able to do in the application. So if I look at work items, for example, those artifacts that I just discussed are built out as work items inside of the application. Well, when we do this, we have a lot of different artifacts. How do we create a new one, right? So we have a test case, we have defects, we have tasks. A great example is a task that might be used in Jira. So we identify a defect in the software that automatically is generated when we have a test fail. We might have a task that's associated with that defect. How do we create a new task? Or another example might be we need a new work item, right? Or new work item type. In that case, one of the things that we need to do is navigate through the application. Well, we need to go to administration. Well, where is the administration panel? Well, this is the way you navigate to it. And you end up with this list of things. Well, under work items, if we wanted to create a new work item, we'd go to types. And when we create those types, new type of work item, this is the interface that we do that in. So if I wanted to create a new work item, we would just identify the name of the work item, the icon that it represents, and we'd click on save, and that would create a new work item. Or another example might be we want to show the linking relationship. Well, what are the linking relationships between these work items? Well, this is really non-intuitive to a person that hasn't been working with the tool a long time. You need to go to the enumerations page in the work items section, and there happens to be an enumeration list that's called work item link. When we click on that and we say edit, right? These are all of the different relationships. So it's not only that though. If I want to create a new mitigation relationship, I click on that relationship and it brings up this interface. Well, the interface, the way it's set up is you read it left to right. The task mitigates the failure mode. The task is the child by definition on the left side. The failure mode is the parent. This really matters when we go to do traceability, because if we start with the failure mode and say what's linked to it, it goes parent to child backlinked. So if we don't have this relationship right, when we go to report on it, we're not going to be able to see the work items. So these are the nuances that are associated with how it is exactly we're going to create these artifacts. Well, we have to communicate this. And there's a couple different ways we could do it. We could train a person, we could bring them into a room, we could open Polarion, we could tell them to create a work item, show them how to create that work item, and then hope they remember it in the future. Well, the other way to do it is to use New Wired and graphically walk through this and put it in as a journey so it's easy for us to understand how to do that. I'll just give you another example. In this help menu, right, that New Wired's installed, and if we wanted to, we could go to the journey that is create a new condition script. And if we click on that, then it'd walk us through that process. We might have another one that is creation of a work item type, or creation of a linking relationship between work items. And that way, the process that I just showed you, we could walk through it and understand very clearly how it's done in the application. Even though I was taught how to do that in a training operation 2 years ago, and now all of a sudden I need to, as an administrator, add this linking relationship. Well, where is it? How do I do it? And this is a really clear way for me to jump into it. The complexity of this application is really tough. Just give you another couple examples. One of them might be that I have these shortcuts on the top. So anything above the line is a shortcut for me as a user that can either be put in from an administration standpoint or I can change. Well, how do we change this navigation panel? Well, if we had a journey, we could understand that we click on this gear icon, we go to manage shortcuts. It's going to bring up the interface that is the shortcuts. Well, if I wanted to do that, though, if I wanted to create a shortcut from one of these document pages, what I could also do is say, really, in the design verification, or maybe a better example in design inputs, let's say I have the design inputs page and I want to have a link to that. Well, how do you create a new shortcut to that? Well, the way you do it is you click on this star. Well, that star brings you to the interface. We select a new icon. Say we want to select the world icon for this, and we say add. What it's going to do is create that new shortcut for us. Well, how would I know that the star is the thing I need to do? Click on to bring that into the interface. So these are all just a few examples, and I think the last example I'll stop with is in Polarion. Another thing that we do when we create these different work item types, or when we create these new testing or test methods, one example is we go to test runs, right? And we execute on a test, and we have a failed test here, right? If we have a failed test, what automatically happens inside of Polarion is it's going to create a defect. And that defect is going to be populated with all the information about what failed in the test. Well, once we do that, we're going to want to create a test, or we're going to want to be able to create a task for correction of that defect so that we can retest it and run it through the process. Well, oftentimes when people do these tasks and they process the defects, they'll interface with Jira to do that, because Jira is a great ticketing system that software people often use to managing their software. Well, if you do that, we have a journey that doesn't occur only inside of Polarion. So maybe, Guido, I could just turn it over to you, and you could talk a little bit about how do we do these cross application journeys as well. So it's not just about, can I operate inside of Polarion and correct some of these things, provide some understanding of how to use the application, but oftentimes we're going to have to go cross application. So Guido, maybe you could talk a little bit about task management and defect management in the context of utilizing Polarion and Jira together. So thanks everybody. Appreciate the chat. And if there's anything that we can do to help you either with New Wired or with Polarion, please let us know. We'd be more than happy to walk you down your journey.
Thank you all for joining us today. So my name is Guido Pifferi, and I'm the product manager at New Wired. I can say that in my role, I work closely with our customers, and I regularly get to know the many challenges that they face, especially when it comes to user enablement and generally speaking, when it comes to driving the real engagement with their digital tools. So I'm excited to be here with you today to share some insights and to explore how we can better support your teams and your goals. So I'll focus my analysis on customers who are using Polarion. However, I'd like to point out that the challenges that I will describe are not specific to Polarion alone. So because NewWired can be deployed on virtually any web-based application, I had the opportunity to observe many different platforms and environments, and I can say that the patterns are very similar. Across tools and across industries, the underlying issues around user enablement tend to repeat themselves. So I can say that what we typically see in organization using Polarion is a very strong commitment at the beginning. That's pretty common. There is significant investment in licenses, for example, at the beginning, and a lot of time and energy goes into the implementation phase. Processes are carefully defined, governance models are usually structured, and compliance requirements are fully addressed. And so, on paper, everything seems to be set up properly, and maybe it is, at least theoretically. But then reality kicks in. And from my experience, I can tell that the first thing that happens every time is that once everything has been set up, users start to struggle to navigate the complex workflows. For example, the advanced modules of the platform of Polarion that are usually the one that could really drive the value, they frequently remain underutilized, or even worse, they are used in the wrong way. So, for example, users might start feeding the wrong data to the system, and this can end up creating real issues to the organizations and potentially even financial losses. And this issue might also spread throughout the organization. For example, another critical point can be the support teams that end up overloaded with the same questions and repeating the same answers to different users that are struggling to embrace the new the new platform or the processes inside it. And moreover, what's important to understand is also the fact that this isn't just a temporary issue during the initial rollout, but it's something that usually continues throughout the entire life cycle of Polarion usage. For example, when new releases are introduced, they bring additional change management challenges. Or, for example, when a new technology is introduced in the workflow, like something that could be complementary to Polarion and should be integrated in some processes, here you have the same initial issues that you encountered during the initial rollout for Polarion, but now just for another technology. So all these issues usually happen for one reason, and that is the fact that organizations often think that the implementation of a new technology is enough by itself to get value out of it. But the real challenge is not access the technology or having the technology in place. That's usually just the beginning. The real challenge is enabling people to use that functionality, that technology confidently, correctly, and consistently every single day. So now that we listed all the possible issues that an organization can encounter when deploying a new technology, let's see what a possible solution can be to those issues. Let's see what NewWired can offer as a solution for those issues. So NewWired is a tool that provides a continuous and process-driven in-app guidance that is deployed directly inside Polarion. So instead of sending your users to uh, extensive PDF documentation or to external training sessions, or let them float your support by with IT support tickets, uh, UWired bring the guidance directly inside their workflow. So by using those step-by-step and contextual support, they basically are retained inside their workflow, directly inside the platform. That again can be Polarion or can be any other web application. And so your users will automatically get the support exactly where and when they need it. So let's talk now about some use cases that can be addressed with New White. So the first one, the most obvious one, is obviously the onboarding. So with New Wired, new team members can be guided directly inside Polarion with structured walkthroughs. Instead of shadowing a colleague for weeks, or instead of sending him to attend multiple training sessions, with New Wired, your users can be guided through real tasks, so they can be guided while they are performing the task. Then can be also shown around to which fields matter the most for them, can be informed about the compliance requirements for each areas of the product, for each task, and then you can also prevent them from making mistakes, because NewWire can also validate some of the data that the users can provide to the platform. And here it's important to note the fact that every content created with NewWire, every guidance content, can be targeted to a specific group of users. So for example, in the eventuality of a new group of users that needs to be introduced to the platform, NewWire can target only those people that needs onboarding, and it can do it pretty easily, especially on Polarion, because NewWire can integrate itself with the authentication process of Polarion itself. So that means that your users only needs to get logged in on Polarion, and from there NewWire can target those users, can understand who they are and if they need onboarding content created for them or not. Then there is a use case that is not related to the onboarding, so to the initial phase of technology adoption, and is the uh, ongoing support and the change management. So imagine whenever there is a new release, a new module, a new process update, or compliance adjustment, and it should be delivered to your user base. They should be uh, introduced to all these new changes. In this case, Newwire can immediately guide users through what has changed. So this dramatically reduces the resistance to change or the confusion that your users can encounter during this period in which things and processes and tasks and compliance is changing inside your organization. And it can also reduce the support requests that usually your support team gets internally from the whole user base. So basically, NewWire ensures that the process updates are actually adopted and not ignored. And NewWire can do this in many ways. The most straightforward one, obviously, is to leverage the walkthroughs, what we call journeys, that are the step-by-step guides that can be deployed directly uh, into your users' workflows. But this can be done in many ways. For example, if you already have some material, some documentation that needs to be delivered to your users, it can be done directly through NewWire without sending, for example, emails that will most likely get ignored by your users. NewWire can deliver those very same material in nesting them inside the journeys, or for example providing a banner that appears when you decide it will appear. And those banners can contain information, can contain guides, or can contain the very same documentation, PDFs, pictures, videos even. Videos can be embedded in those banners. So what we do is basically offering a toolbox, and then you decide how to use this toolbox uh, to offer your end users the right support when and where they need it. Finally, I would like to talk a bit about uh, process enforcement and compliance. So, you know that in highly regulated environments, the compliance is something that is non-negotiable. The problem is, how do you spread this compliance? How do you make your users follow this compliance? So in my experience, I can say this usually happens by sending a lot and a lot of emails that usually can get ignored by your end users. But what if there's a tool that can deliver some chunks of those compliance exactly where your users need to follow that compliance? And this is exactly what NewWire can do. For example, NewWire can uh, warn your end users that there is a step on some process that must not be skipped, and NewWire can force your users to do not forget about that step. Or, for example, let's talk about what I'd like to call the micro rules that usually um, exist inside an organization. That kind of micro rules, that kind of behavior or best practices that are not contained in the official documentation of a technology. For example, let's take Polarion. Uh, Polarion has an official knowledge base in which you can learn how to use the product. But mm, there are many things that are customized in terms of UI, for example, or in terms also of processes, and those information cannot be found inside the official documentation of Polarion. For example, let's say if I take Polarion, I see many times my customers that has a peculiar way to create user stories, or peculiar way to fill up the fields of a user stories, or the user stories themselves can be set up in a really different way, in a really customized way, uh, compared to what the Polarion knowledge base can teach your users. So NewWire is there exactly to deliver those kind of information that are really um, unique to your organization, because you can create guides that really speaks about how your organization uses the platform, not about how the platform vendor thinks you should use their product. Inside NewWire, this is exactly what we call operational DNA. And keep in mind that this operational DNA is exactly what usually makes the difference in the market. Is about how you differentiate yourself, your organization, from all the other organization in the market. And in times like these, in times in which AI is pushing to standardize everything, defending this operational DNA, I think, is more and more crucial. So, so far we've seen what NewWire can do. Let's quickly talk also about where NewWire can do all this stuff. As I said, NewWire is a multi-application tool, so it doesn't work only on Polarion, but can work also on many other application as long as they are web-based. And not only that, but the guides you create can also be cross-application. They can begin in the application A and end up in the application B, and they will bring your end users through those different applications. So your end users doesn't need to learn about to um, navigating from A to B, but NewWire will do that for them. So what all of this translate into? Let's talk about the business impact of NewWire. Uh, just now a quick overview about some bullet points that means value for you and your organization. First of all, NewWire can bring fewer redundant support tickets. Then it can bring also faster adoption for the advanced features of your technologies. It can bring higher confidence across teams in using those technologies. It can guarantee a stronger alignment with the compliance requirements. And finally, it is some better ROI on the Polarion licenses you spent money on. So essentially, NewWired acts as a permanent digital guide inside Polarion and your whole digital environment. But I'd say now enough about talking about NewWired. Let's see it in action directly inside Polarion. So what you see right now on screen is our Polarion demo stage. And what you see in the bottom right corner here is basically the door to access NewWired. This is our launcher. You can consider it as the dashboard of NewWired. And NewWired is basically an overlay. So it is a layer that puts itself on top of the underlying application, that is Polarion in this case. So from here, I can decide which kind of support I want. Let's start with something really simple, like selecting the right project. So as it was a music track, I can click on play and NewWired will start reproducing my guide. Right now is asking me to click on here, to click on the project list here, and now I have my project list open and some information about that list. Now I will select one of those projects. It will be, in this case, Drive Pilot. And as you can see, I'm now in the right project. Let's try now something more advanced. For example, I want now to create a new work item. So I will click on play here. I get welcomed by NewWired, then I'll click on next and I'm asked to click on work items. Then when I'm inside the work item section, I'm asked to click on plus, that is the create button. And from here, I have to pick the right work item I want to create. Consider that here NewWire might also deliver some information about each and every work item that I would be able to create. So in this case, I will select my task. I want to create a task. And now, as you can see, while I am creating my task, I get guided, I get information about how to do that. For example, here I must to give a title that I will call it just test right now. I will click then on next, and NewWire is giving me some contextual information. For example, here is explaining me that the title is a field that is not required by default, but it helps the collaboration within the project stakeholders. And consider also it could be the other way around. It could be that if I don't add a title to my task, it will force me, it will warn me and then force me um, to give a name before advancing in the creation process. So now that I gave the title to my task, I can click on next, and then I am guided to uh, the work item additional information. So here, as you can see, I'm getting some information about all the fields and the settings of this task. I'm getting some information about which type of work item I'm creating, which project it belongs to, which is what the status of the work item means, and so on. Now, I will be sure that everything is filled up. I pretend that everything is filled up right now, and then I click on next. When I'm click on next, I will get to the next step, that is giving a description to my work item. So here I think is where New Wired matters the most, because every organization has its own way to describe a work item, his own structure, his own layout, and here New Wired can really deliver those information, can really shape the description layout for your end users. And consider, for example, if you already have some documentation that speaks about how your users should shape the description of your work items, you can embed it directly here inside the bubble, or copy paste the relevant information directly here. So they will be delivered exactly um, in the place they matter the most, and exactly when they matter the most. So now let's pretend I gave some description to my work item, so like uh, uh, acceptance criteria. Yeah, some typo there, but doesn't matter. I will click on next, and now I can get to my comments. And again, NewWire can give me some information, some guidance, some support about how to fill up those fields. Once I'm done, NewWire points me toward the Save button, and I'll click on now Save. And as you can see, I have my new test work item ready. Now, finally, let me show you how NewWired is not a tool that is available only on Polarion, but is more like a companion that can follow you through every workflow, no matter where you are or which platform you're using. Let's now try to follow this new journey, where once again I am tasked to open my work items list. But this time I will open this project testing task, where um, the creator of this task is basically making sure that I do not forget to track the task both on Polarion and inside my Jira board. So here I get the description of my task, where there is also the link to my Jira board. So what I have to do here is to open my Jira board through the link provided. And now, as you can see, NewWired is keep following me and guiding me through the process across two different applications, and is now uh, asking me to change the status of my task from in progress to in review. And I reached the end now, both of my journey and also my demonstration. So thank you everyone for being with us today. It was a pleasure having you here. If you have any further question, please feel free to reach out after the session. Have a great day, and we hope to see you in our next webinar.
As we approach the end of today's session, I would like to thank Lawrence and Guido for sharing their insights and for walking us through both the challenges and the opportunities around improving Polarion adoption. I also want to thank you all for joining us today, and if you like to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out to us after the session. Thank you again for your time and participation, and have a great day.